Welcome back to Boring Build Friday. Today we're working on a 2014 Chevrolet Corvette. And the fact that this thing's a little bit of a basket case will mean that I have to work extra hard to make this boring. But I'll try. So let's first start off with, this is not my car. It's not a rebuild, it's not even a total. It's actually a friend of mine's car, and I use that term friend loosely. Because when I was about 13 years old, he thought it'd be hilarious to handcuff me to a forklift. And being a 13-year-old whose mouth moves faster than their brain, I decided to talk a little smack. Well, this was a long time ago, before the internet, when running your mouth actually had consequences. So I told him he couldn't handcuff me again. Turns out I was wrong. So the moral of this story is don't run your mouth if you can't back it up. Instead, wait 3 or 4 decades until he asks you to work on his Corvette, then get your revenge. So how did I get involved in this, and how did such a simple job turn into such a basket case? Well, about 6 months ago, it was hitting the left front suspension, the fender, and the headlight. It came into a shop, and somebody took it all apart. That guy is no longer in the industry. Since then, the car has been moved around, parts have been moved around, some are lost, some are broken, and I have no idea where any of them go. I've never worked on a C7, so I can't do it blindfolded like a Grand Am. Now, 3 or 4 other people have also had their hands in this, so nobody has any idea where anything is anymore. So this build is going to be a little bit slower than some of my other ones, but we'll get it done. There's going to be a huge learning curve on figuring out where things should be, what I'm missing, and what I have. Once we get that figured out, it should be pretty simple. Why do I want to get involved with a mess like this that really isn't my responsibility? Well, that old rule. He who fixes the car shall have the first test drive. Doing it for the test drive, of course, and maybe a little bit of money. So let's see what it's going to take to get this Corvette back on the road before summer's over. So I feel like I missed an opportunity. Somebody's been here before, and they seem to have left it right about here. We need to put the inner fender on. They ground off all the old bonding adhesive, so we'll need to put new stuff up. But before we do that, we want to get our inner fender in there, make sure everything's going to fit before we start gluing it on. A dry fit. When we have everything where we like it, then we'll put our bonding agent on, clamp it up, and as soon as it sets up, we can move on.
These wiring harnesses, the module, and the antenna are all mounted to the fender. And since we don't need this spaghetti getting into our glue, we need to get it out of the way. We'll just tuck it up out of the way because we only get one shot at this adhesive. If that stuff falls into it, we're going to have to start over.
We don't want that stuff getting in our way.
So there's our inner fender.
Much better.
Put a couple clamps on it, hold it in place, make sure it's tight.
So before we go any further, our fender is pushed out. So we're going to have to move it in to make sure our hood is lined up. Looks like it just moved on the bolts. So first we'll put the bolts back where they belong and see if that closes up our gap. If it does, it might have just been when the hood came over, it just pushed the fender over. Hopefully. It wasn't hit that hard, so we'll find out.
So we'll try the easy bolts we can see first.
So that one moved no problem, but there must be one that's further back here. Unfortunately, Fort Knox here is locked up tight as a drum. Battery's dead, I don't know where the keys are. I do have a window that's slightly down, maybe that'll help. Well, the hood's open, hopefully we can power it up through the alternator. We'll find out. Of course, it couldn't be as easy as pressing the door button. Okay. Hey, I found the key. Hang on to these. Okay. Now maybe we can get on to the other side. Slow way to open a window.
So now we get to the bolt that's in the back and the door jamb. Push it in and tighten it up. There's still one more. It's underneath this little cowl cover in the corner. So we'll take the fillet piece off the end, then we can lift up the cowl screen and sneak a screwdriver in there, loosen up the screw, move our fender, and tighten it back up.
Let's see how our gap looks now.
I did ask the crickets to stop singing the song of their people so I could make this video. Unfortunately, they weren't willing to accommodate my video needs, so please enjoy the cricket background music. It doesn't look good. The hood won't latch, I have to hold it down, and our gap is way too wide.
It looks like we have a little movement on the striker, and it's pulling the hood towards the driver's side. So if we put it back where it was, hopefully that'll give us our gap. See if that worked. Well, at least the latch is. Still not right though. And there's some movement on these hinges. We'll try that.
So since this car wasn't hit too bad, I have the luxury of just using the gaps on the right side and working my way around. So that's why I started with the door, because I know that's in the right spot, lined it up with the fender, move on to the hood, so that we can move on to our fender. So I just moved down the line, get all my gaps straight. So once we got the hood in the right place, it's time to get our fender on the car. So we're going to take all of our clips off of our broken up fender, and we're going to put them on our new fender. It is nice having the box of parts, so I know where the clips go. And when I said box of parts, I wasn't joking. This is what I got. Little pieces of the fender. Lots of extra little parts I still haven't figured out where they go. And even some parts that don't go to this car. Just to make my job interesting. But it is nice to find a piece like that with the bolt and the bracket, so I know exactly where it goes and how it goes. So now I have the bolt and the J-nut, and I can be sure they go there. Helps me match up the other kinds where I wasn't sure exactly which fasteners to use. Now I know. So now we can throw our fender up there. Having those little pieces with the J-nuts on there also help to tell which side of the bracket the fender goes on. So we got a little piece of our old fender here, had our two bolts in the front. So just take those out, put them right back where they belong. Now we'll close our hood, see how it looks. Horrible is the answer. Definitely have to do some adjusting. That is not right at all. So we'll move our fender around. And we can take our inner fender off, get it ready to glue up there. Some of the old adhesive was still on there, so we got to chisel it off. It's like concrete at this point. So once we chisel it off, we'll grind it down, and then we'll wipe it down with wax and grease remover. Make sure there's nothing on it that's going to contaminate it. We'll wipe down our piece. And now we'll put our bonding agent on. I chose to put it on the piece because the piece has some serrated lines on it, so you know where the bonding agent goes. Made it a little easier to not forget where to put it. So we put it on the piece, then we'll put the piece up. We get one shot at this. Otherwise we're going to have a mess. Have to wait for it to dry, clean it off, and start over. Clamp it up there. Now we'll slide our fender up there. We have 50 minutes of working time with this adhesive. So that gives us time to put the fender up, line it up, move the clamps if we need to. So we're going to bolt our fender into place. We gotta take this duct out of the way just so we can get a clamp in there. That's for the brakes, in case you were wondering. So our gaps are good. Everything's in the right place. Now, we're just going to have to let the fender sit. It takes 5 hours to fully cure. So, it's been a couple hours. I'm going to take the fender off. Now that the fender's off, we can put everything underneath it back together. Our glue still isn't fully cured, but I'm not going to be messing with it too much, so it's got a skin coat on it. I won't track it everywhere if one of these pieces fall into it, so we can start working on it. We'll route our wires down in there. Plug in our suspension control module. Now I can put the bracket on our inner fender. Luckily this bracket was on our old inner fender, so we had the bracket and the bolt to put it back in. Clip in the module. Now we got the washer bottle. Slides up in there. Plug in the hose. Snap it into the bottle. And bolt the bottle in. Now you can plug all the wiring harnesses in. You can kind of figure out where they go. Figure out what they plug into. Get them in that general location, then look for little holes where the wiring and loom brackets connect to, and snap them in. You kind of figure out how the wiring harness goes so it's not all twisted up. Now I had the bracket for the antenna. Still had one screw in it, so I took that screw out. Now I have a bucket of bolts. No organization whatsoever. This could be all of them. This could be extras. This could only be some of them. I don't know. But I found another bolt that matches our first one. Now all I need is one more. And there it is. And since there was only two in the box, I assume these are the right ones. I'll run a wiring harness and plug in the antenna. Now we can take off the clips to hold the cables for the hood latch out of our old inner fender. In the pile. We'll clip them in, then clip our cable in. And now we're onto the suspension. Loosen up the inner tie rod jam nut, and loosen up the outer tie rod. Unbolt the ABS wire, and unclip it. I can unbolt the lower ball joint, and take the outer tie rod off. We're going to count the turns so we can spin it back on the same number of turns and get our alignment somewhat close. Now we got our knuckle and hub assembly off. Unbolt our rotor. Unbolt the dust shield. Transfer down to our new knuckle. Flip it over. Now we can bolt on our air deflector for our brakes. Then we can unbolt our wheel hub. Or try. We need a real impact. Because electric ones suck. And I don't want to hear how your Milwaukee could have done it. So now we put our new hub in, and we can bolt it in. Make sure we have everything off of our old knuckle. And put our rotor back on. Now we can change our inner tie rod, spin the jamming nut off, take the clamp off, launch it across the shop. We can open up the clamp on the inside of the boot and slide the boot off. Now we'll turn the wheels and extend that tie rod end out. We'll grab the wrench. I hope I got the right size. I think this is metric. So loosen it up and spin it off.
GM missed the opportunity for Loctite. I got you.
One of the easier tie rods. No inner tie rod end tool needed. Get a wrench in there. I chose to do it when the suspension is off, give myself a little more room. Not to mention, I really don't like inner tie rods, so I was putting it off. Get our metric adjustable wrench in there.
Click.
And put our boot back on. Turn the wheel the other way so we don't have to try to extend the boot over the rack and pinion. Put our clamp back on and our jam nut. Now we put our knuckle back on. Bolt our lower ball joint in. Now we put our shock in. The last guy was nice and taped all the bolts into the old shock, so I knew which ones went where, and I didn't have to try to figure it out. Put the bolts in the bottom. We have to jack it up so that we can tighten them up. Tighten them down. And put our upper control arm in. Make sure we got it in the right way. Put our bolts in the top. Now jack it up a little bit more so we can get that upper ball joint in. I didn't tighten up the bolts to the frame yet. I wanted to give myself a little extra room in case there wasn't enough to get the upper ball joint in. Turns out there was. So now we can tighten them down. And put the nut on the upper ball joint. We'll let the suspension down. That'll hold the ball joint in place so we can tighten it up and it won't spin. Now we can route our ABS wire in there. Plug it into the clamps. Slide it into our knuckle and bolt it in. Throw our caliper on. Push the pads back in and slide it on. Bolt it in. And now we'll put the outer tie rod on. Put some never sees on there to be nice to the next guy. Although it is a Corvette, it shouldn't be going in the salt. Just in case. We'll spin it on. Counting the turns. Get it back about where it was before. So those air baffles for the brakes keep binding up. Once this is all together, I'm going to check it. That one on the inside could be bent. We'll find out. Tighten up our tie rod. Spin our jam nut back. A little bit of never sees. And then we'll tighten it up. Of course, the alignment guy's going to hate me when he has never sees all over the place, but come on, dude, pick your battles. So we'll put the horns up. Bolt them up. And put the duct back on for the brakes that we took off so we could use our clamps. If I can remember where it goes. Now we'll run our wiring. This is the wiring for the horn and for the marker light on the side. That's actually for the marker light. And that's for the horn. And that's for the headlight. We're not ready for that yet. So now we can throw our fender up there. Our glue is fully cured. So this will be the last time we have to put the fender up. I hope. both in the back. Put our hood down. I did end up taking the latches out so we could line everything up. Then we'll put the latches in at the end, just so we don't have to keep opening the hood 1,000 times. Put our wheel back on and set it back down on the ground. See how everything fits. So now we can put our hood latches back in. We'll line it back up with the marks where they used to be and go from there. The one on the passenger side, that should work. The one on the driver's side, that'll only work if I got the inner fender exactly where the old one was. I must have it close enough because everything fits.
So that's it for today. We've gone as far as we can go. I'm out of parts. So as soon as the parts come in, I can fit the front bumper, make sure everything fits. If it does, the bodywork and painting gnomes can do their part, and we can have this Corvette back on the road. So like this video if you found it interesting, share it if you think somebody else might. Subscribe to see the rest of this build, or whatever else I'm working on. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.